What happens when a father hasn't seen his son in 10 years, and that son suddenly walks onto a live television stage in the middle of an interview? Stop the tape. Dr. Phil's voice cut sharply through the studio. The cameras froze. The audience gasped. And there, under the bright lights, a father saw his son for the first time in a decade, not in private, but in front of millions. The next 7 minutes would become one of the most unforgettable moments in Dr. Phil's history. The interview had started routinely. Robert Williams, 56, had come on the show to discuss forgiveness and the process of healing from family trauma. He sat in the guest chair, calm but visibly burdened. "Robert, you reached out to us 6 months ago," Dr. Phil began, leaning forward with his usual attentive posture. "You said you wanted to talk about regret. What did you mean by that?" Robert's hands shook slightly as he adjusted his microphone. "I made a mistake, the biggest mistake of my life, and I don't know how to make it right." Dr. Phil's expression grew serious. "What was the mistake?" he asked. "I abandoned my son," Robert replied. The words hung heavy in the air. 10 years ago he was 18, we argued, and I told him I was done being his father. The room fell silent. "What was the fight about?" Dr. Phil asked, his voice steady but compassionate. Robert's voice trembled as he spoke. He had always dreamed of becoming an artist, but I wanted him to follow in my footsteps and study law. I told him that if he walked out that door to attend art school, he would no longer be my son. He paused, his eyes filled with tears, and then he left. I never called, never reached out. A full decade slipped by in silence. Dr. Phil watched him closely. "Have you tried to contact him since?" he asked. "Every day for the past year," Robert confessed. "But my letters come back unopened and my calls are blocked. His mother and I are divorced. She refuses to give me his address, says he doesn't want to see me, and honestly, I can't blame him." What Robert didn't realize was that backstage, his son Marcus was watching the interview on a monitor. The producers had located Marcus 3 weeks earlier, after careful discussions and several therapy sessions with the show's counselors. Finally, Marcus had agreed to come, but only under one condition. "I'll go," he said, "but I need to hear what he says first. I need to know if he truly means it, or if this is just for the cameras." Dr. Phil leaned back in his chair. "Robert, if your son were watching right now, what would you say to him?" Robert turned to face the camera, his voice breaking. "Marcus, I was wrong. Completely wrong. I let my pride, my ego, and my foolish expectations blind me. You had the courage to follow your passion, and instead of supporting you, I pushed you away. I failed you, not the other way around." In the monitor room, Marcus broke down in tears. "I have to go out there," he told the producer. "I can't just sit here and watch." The producer hesitated. This wasn't part of the show. None of it was rehearsed. But when she saw the raw emotion on Marcus's face, she made a call. "Wait," she said into her headset. "Dr. Phil, we have a situation." On stage, Dr. Phil touched his earpiece, listening intently. His face changed immediately. Raising his hand, he said firmly, "Stop the tape." The studio went still. Cameras froze. The audience murmured in confusion. Robert's expression turned anxious. "What's going on?" he asked. Dr. Phil stood, walked to the edge of the stage, then turned back with a softer tone. "Robert," he said gently, "I need to tell you something, and I need you to stay right where you are." Robert's face drained of color. "Is something wrong? Is Marcus okay?" Dr. Phil nodded reassuringly. "He's fine," he said quietly. He paused, and the studio seemed to freeze in silence. "He's here." The words didn't sink in immediately. "What?" Robert whispered, rising unsteadily to his feet. "Your son is backstage," the producer said. "He's been watching this entire interview and he wants to come out." Robert's hand moved to his chest. He's here now?" Dr. Phil gave a quiet nod. For the first time in his career, he set aside television protocol. Walking over to Robert, he placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder, not as a host but as a person. "I'm giving you a choice," Dr. Phil said softly, though every microphone caught his words. "We can turn the cameras off and do this privately, or if you're both comfortable, let the world see it. Not for ratings, not for spectacle, but because there are countless fathers and sons who need to know reconciliation is possible." Tears streamed down Robert's face as he shook his head. "I don't care about the cameras, I just want to see my son." Dr. Phil turned toward the wings and gave a signal. Marcus Williams stepped onto the stage. He was 28 now, yet to Robert he was still the boy who'd once stood in their living room a decade ago, suitcase in hand, chasing his dreams instead of his father's approval. Marcus stopped about 10 feet away, his hands trembling. The two stood frozen, facing each other in absolute stillness. The studio was silent enough to hear the hum of the air conditioning. No one spoke, no one moved. Dr. Phil stepped back, giving them room. Though the cameras kept rolling, they no longer mattered. This wasn't television anymore, it was real, it was human. "Hi, Dad," Marcus finally whispered. Robert's face crumpled. "Marcus." "Dad, I've been so angry," Marcus said, tears falling freely. "Angry for 10 years. I know," Robert said softly. "You should be." Marcus's voice broke. "But I really missed you." Robert moved then. 3 quick steps and he pulled his son into his arms. Marcus resisted for a single second, one heartbeat of 10 years' pain before collapsing into his father's embrace. The studio erupted. The audience rose, clapping and crying, witnessing something that went far beyond television. Dr. Phil stood aside, his eyes glistening, allowing the moment to unfold. Father and son held each other tightly, repeating, "I'm sorry," again and again until the words blended into sounds of grief, relief and forgiveness. And when the room finally settled, after what felt like hours but was barely 90 seconds, Dr. Phil quietly stepped forward, ready to bring this moment to its close. He didn't interrupt. He simply stood nearby. When they finally pulled apart but still remained connected, hands resting on each other's shoulders, Dr. Phil spoke calmly. "Marcus, can I ask you something?" Marcus nodded, wiping his tears with his sleeve. "What made you decide to come out today?" Marcus took a deep, shaky breath before answering. "I wanted to be brave. My whole life I just wanted to hear him say that. I wanted him to see me, not the version of me he hoped for." He looked toward his father. "When you said I was brave for chasing my dream, that's when I knew. You finally understood." Robert's grip on his son's shoulders tightened. "I should have said it 10 years ago." "Yeah," Marcus replied softly, "you should have. But you're saying it now." Dr. Phil reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a white envelope. "Marcus, before coming out here you asked me to give this to your father if the moment felt right." He handed it to Robert. "He wanted you to have it." Robert's hands trembled as he took it. "What is this?" "Open it," Marcus said quietly. Inside was an old photograph, edges worn from years of being kept close. It showed a young Marcus, about 7, holding up a crayon drawing. Beside him stood Robert, smiling proudly. On the back, written in Marcus's handwriting, were 4 simple words: "You were proud once." Robert broke down completely, pulling Marcus into his arms again. The photograph was pressed between them as if he feared letting go might make his son disappear. Dr. Phil stood back, giving them space. Then, with the poise of someone who's witnessed countless moments of healing, he said, "I want to tell you both something." They turned toward him, still holding on. "This moment right here, this is what forgiveness looks like. It's not perfect. It's not clean. It's raw and painful. But it's real. It doesn't erase the past," Marcus said softly, "but it opens a door to the future." He turned toward Robert. "You can't reclaim those 10 years, but you have every day ahead of you." "I know," Robert replied quietly. "I'll do better. I promise." "I'm holding you to that," Marcus said, smiling through his tears. Dr. Phil faced the audience. "I want everyone here and everyone watching to understand this. Reconciliation isn't about forgetting. It's about deciding to move forward despite the pain. It takes courage, both to apologize and to forgive." The audience rose in applause, a standing ovation that lasted 3 full minutes. Dr. Phil looked toward the cameras, still rolling even after they were supposed to stop, and made a choice. "We'll take a break," he announced. "When we return, Robert and Marcus will sit down together, and we'll talk about what comes next. Because this moment is powerful, but the real work begins now." During the break, Dr. Phil did something rare. He joined them off stage, not as a host, but as someone who understood family wounds. "I'm proud of both of you," he said. "This took real courage." Marcus hesitated. "What if we mess it up again?" Dr. Phil smiled. "Then you try again. That's what family does. Share and subscribe. So this story is never forgotten." When they returned, Robert and Marcus sat side by side, not divided by the coffee table but united on the couch. Dr. Phil guided them through what came next. Family therapy, regular dinners, clear boundaries, and rebuilding trust step by step. He brought in the show's counselor, offering real tools and support. This wasn't a TV stunt. It was the start of healing. As the show ended, Dr. Phil spoke one last time. In more than 20 years of this show, I've seen thousands of families in pain. But today reminded me why I do this. Because every person watching has someone they've lost touch with, someone they need to forgive or ask forgiveness from. He paused. Don't wait 10 years. Don't wait 10 days. Life's too short and tomorrow isn't promised. Months later, the episode had reached over 50 million views. The hashtag #Don'tWait10 years sparked a wave of reunions around the world. Dr. Phil's team received thousands of letters from viewers who reconnected with estranged loved ones. But the most meaningful change wasn't televised. Robert and Marcus shared dinner every Sunday. They weren't recreating the past. They were shaping a new future. When Marcus held his first art gallery show, Robert attended, standing before his son's work with tears in his eyes. I was wrong about so much, he said quietly. But most of all, I was wrong about this. Your art isn't just beautiful, it's meaningful. You were always meant to do this. The once hidden photograph from the envelope now sat framed in Robert's office, displayed proudly, a reminder of what pride had cost and what forgiveness restored. On the back, beneath Marcus's words, Robert had added his own. And I will be proud again. Every day. Forever. Dr. Phil gave them the platform, but they did the hardest part themselves. Years later, when asked about that episode, Dr. Phil said, "That wasn't about me. It was about a father and son brave enough to be vulnerable in front of millions. They proved it's never too late to say, 'I'm sorry and I love you.'" The photograph, the envelope, the 10 years of silence, all led to 7 minutes that changed 2 lives and inspired millions. Because sometimes the bravest act is walking onto a stage to face the person you've hurt, and sometimes it's opening your arms when they do. 3 years later, the ripple continued. Dr. Phil received a letter from a man in Ohio who had watched the episode with his estranged daughter. I picked up the phone the next day. It read, "We hadn't spoken in 7 years. Now she's getting married, and I'll be walking her down the aisle. Thank you for showing me it's never too late." The episode became the most requested in the show's history. Therapists used it in counseling sessions. Universities included it in psychology courses about healing and emotional intelligence. But the most profound legacy was Robert and Marcus's. They launched a podcast called Second Chances, sharing their story, the mistakes, the healing, the setbacks, and the victories. Their honesty gave countless families hope. On the 3rd anniversary of their reunion, Marcus posted the original photo on social media. The caption read, "3 years ago, I walked on stage angry and afraid. Today, I have my dad back. Not the one I wanted at 18, but the one he chose to become at 56. Robert replied, "And sometimes the greatest gift is a son who gives you that second chance." I love you, Marcus. Dr. Phil saw the post and smiled. His life's work was built on one belief, that people can change, that families can heal, and that truth, no matter how painful, is better than silence. That 7-minute moment on stage proved him right in the most beautiful way possible.